proper taper. If you have a proper taper from a proper training build, you should be gaining at least 2 or 3% in performance anyhow. If not, 4, 5, or 6 if you really nail a good taper. Mm-hmm. And again, if you add equipment changes in that is huge. And that's where the trust and faith in what you've done it comes in handy. And you have to develop that. There's mental training. That's the other big thing that people don't do true mental training. You have to set aside time to go through visualization, to plan out your self-talk, to have a routine for relaxation, to put you in the right place. That requires training, just like improving a transition time requires a technical training. You're not forcing a physiological stress there. You are doing something that, though, will have massive impact on race day. And so, again, don't forget those little things. They become the big things. Your head, at the end of the day on race day, will predict your success or failure more than anything else.
That was Neal Henderson of Apex Coaching, and this is the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. Welcome back to the show. I'm Jess, and this is the place where we interview people who are looking, finding, and living their purpose. People who we can all learn from, and today is no exception. We have a great show for you today. Thank you for tuning in and for supporting the YTP. You guys are everything to the life of this podcast, and we are truly grateful for every listen, every share, every time you click on the Amazon banner ad to make your purchase, and for your Patreon support. Thank you. And thank you, universe, for amazing people like today's guest, Neal Henderson. Neal has been a triathlon and cycling coach since the early 1990s, and from then to where he is today has been years of dedication, belief, and patience. Neal was not an overnight success, and most people are not. And honestly, for the sake of sustainability, to truly weather the storm of life and to stand the test of time in our industry of passion, we need the robustness. We need robustness in our being that comes along with climbing up one step at a time on our unique paths. And Neal surely knows this. He takes these same elements into his coaching philosophy and understands, like all the greats do, that training and racing is so much more than getting your workouts done. Neal has coached multiple national champions, world champions, and Olympians with names like Flora Duffy, Taylor Phinney, Cameron Dye, and Jamie Whitmore. Neal raced professionally while coaching from 2000 to 2003, specializing in Xterra and winter triathlons. Over the years, Neal has become internationally known for his ability to transform data into useful information that he then applies to the training of his athletes with precision and accuracy. In 2011, he received the Doc Councilman Coach of the Year Award from the United States Olympic Committee for his use of science in his coaching. But I think what makes Neal such a skillful coach is that he doesn't just focus on the workouts and the data. He looks at the full spectrum of the human experience, and he does this to bring out the best in every one of his athletes. He looks at their life, stress levels, perfection in their form, equipment, sleep quality, and mental acuity, all as a part of the whole that will elicit change within each athlete. These are the little pieces that add up to have a massive influence when it comes to race day. And then on top of it, Neal is just a super cool dude. We caught up with him at Apex headquarters at Rally Sport in Boulder last fall, and he was so gracious to open up space in his packed calendar so that we can now share his wisdom and intelligence with the YT community. Although this episode is short because Neal was running to catch a flight, it is chock full of takeaways, and we really think you're going to enjoy it. But first, I want to make a quick announcement for all our Oceanside 70.3 listeners. I am going to be teaching a post-race day yoga stretch-out class at Endurance House in Oceanside. It's free. Everyone is welcome, and I believe it's going to be at 9 a.m. So just check out our social accounts in the coming weeks for more details. All right, now let's just get down to brass tacks and enter into our conversation with high-performance coach Neal Henderson. huffing and all that good stuff.
Yeah, no huffing and puffing.
Can we
okay.
shut that door?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, so we're rolling, so we're going to dive right in because time is precious with you today, Neal. And it's so good to see you. I think the last time I saw you, I ran into you at Cafe Soleil, like right before we were moving back east. So it must have been about more than 6 years ago now. And we were introduced to you when we were training with Craig Howie right at the beginning of our triathlon career over at Boulder Center for Sports Medicine. You were working over there at that point. We were doing our lactate threshold tests and getting our baseline. And I have to say, you've come a long way from the Gumkowskis.
Yeah. Well,
It was probably a hard thing to move on from.
I hope that some of that information have helped you along the way. And,
Absolutely. Yeah. We actually, in our process of getting rid of everything, like we had our old folders from Boulder Center that we had to get rid of too. Yeah, so when I joke around like that, I mean, you've got some unbelievable athletes right now, and congratulations on Flora Duffy's world champion at the ITU series. That was just such a joy to watch, and we loved it too because we raced down in Cozumel last year, and so we were familiar with everything where it was. And so how were you down there?
I didn't go to Cozumel. I have a pretty intense travel schedule. I spent nearly a month in Rio, and so had to kind of pick and choose which things I could go to, and I'm right now in the midst of a pretty heavy travel schedule. I will be at the Xterra World Championships coming up this Sunday, though, so I've been to a lot of the big events, but I just can't make it to all of them, unfortunately.
And Flora is going to race? Is she playing Xterra?
She's in Maui. She is ready, and
she's a beast.
The goal at this point, would be to have that third in a row world title in the Xterra World Championships. So, it's never easy. There's no gimmies out there. There's no easy days in Maui. No matter how good you're feeling, anything can happen. So there's definitely still work to be done for Flora. And then she goes actually from there to Island House. So she'll have a couple days more in Maui, Monday, and then Tuesday head over to finish out the season with Island House likely.
And so for people that aren't familiar with Island House, what is that?
It's an invitational professional race. 3 days of racing, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Friday races are actually split up into a swim, bike, and run, kind of like prologue type efforts, short individual efforts on each, very short swim, short bike, short run. Then Saturday is kind of the super sprint style, where it's swim, bike, run, and everything is being added up like a stage race in cycling. And the final day on Sunday then is a sprint distance triathlon that the start order is based on your accumulated time. So the slowest athletes are being sent off within the time gap back actually the leader goes first and then the time gap's back. So if anyone overtakes them, before the finish line, so whoever comes across the line is the overall then winner on the day. So
that sounds amazing. Yeah, they should do that for age groupers.
Yeah, they did it last year. Again, it was a smaller number of professionals that they invite. They had a mix of some long course athletes, some ITU athletes, and they have a similar thing going again this year. Flora lost a place on the last day. I also coached Cam Dye, who did it, and he ended up, I think, right on the podium. He was either third or fourth. Got to look back. Haven't looked at that. That race is next weekend. I got Xterra Worlds first.
Yeah, and that's this weekend coming up?
Yep,
okay.
This Sunday.
Okay, cool. So we've just touched upon some of your athletes. So how did you get to this point? How are you working with Flora? How are you working with Cam Dye and Jamie Whitmore too? How has this come about?
Yeah, in some cases people look at it, it's like, wow, that's like an overnight success with Flora or something like that. Well, for me in coaching, it goes back 20 years. I volunteered with the first national team for triathlon in 1996. On my own, I contacted George Dahlem, who was the first national team head coach, and I was working in Pennsylvania at the time at Penn State Center for Sports Medicine in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and I just wrote a letter, an actual written letter, not an email. I sent a letter to him asking if there's any way I could come out and help out in any way, and he actually called me, and we talked, and I came out for 2 weeks on my own dime and just learned and helped, did what I could, basically, for almost 2 weeks there, and got to visit Boulder, then, and that kind of, piqued my interest of coming here. I actually did Boulder Peak Triathlon at the end of that trip just because it happened to be the day before I was flying home. So,
and how is that, coming to Boulder and doing Boulder Peak?
It hurt. It hurt, definitely. Again, I had been here for, a week and a half plus, maybe 11 days. So I had some of the initial physiological adaptations, but not true altitude acclimatized.
Yeah, and that's classically just such a competitive race.
Absolutely.
I'm sure it still is. Definitely one of my favorites. The first ride we did when we were here this week was we just went out and banged out the Boulder Peak course, and nothing like 3 miles into your ride going up Old Stage, coming from sea level. So
it's all uphill to that point too. So I did that race consecutively for many, many years. I still do a relay every now and then when I'm in town. I think in 2008 was the first time that I had missed the race when I was going to the Olympics with Taylor Finney. So I did it consecutively every year from 96 through 2007.
Sometimes you have to make sacrifices like the Olympics.
Exactly.
So you came out here, got a taste of Boulder, and our experience is that doesn't go away, especially when you're an athlete. So how long was it before you came back out?
April of 1997. So just a few months later, I was applying to grad schools. I had applied to CU and moved out in April, even before I was accepted at CU. I was like, I'd been accepted at a couple other schools, and the ones that I would have gone to if I wasn't going to go to CU was out in Oregon. So I decided, in Boulder, I'm at least 2/3 of the way to Oregon. So if it doesn't work out, if I don't get in CU, then I'll just keep going to Oregon and it'll all work out. But fortunately, I did get accepted to CU and stayed here and got involved with the CU Triathlon Club team. And then again with the collegiate and junior national teams in 1999 when I was finishing up grad school as well.
And then how did you get involved with the Boulder Center for Sports Medicine? Because that was the next step, right?
Yes.
You started with them 2000?
2001.
2001.
So I graduated December of 99. I worked in a physical therapy clinic for a little bit. And then shortly after that, I had a great job offer at IBM Boulder. Had just opened up a fitness center for their employees. And so had a job offer there, and I also earned my pro card and got my pro card in the same week of that. And I said yes to both, that I would, try to race as an elite and professional and work full time as the manager of the IBM Boulder Fitness Center, which I think, went along pretty well for about a year. And that's then when the position at Boulder Center for Sports Medicine opened. And I had actually applied to do an internship with Boulder Center for Sports Medicine when I was in grad school, and Andy Pruitt wrote me a nice letter saying, thanks, but no thanks. We don't take interns. Good luck. And then there was another position opened up as basically biomechanics tech. And I said, I'd love to do it, And it was kind of in that interim period before I started working at IBM Boulder. And he said, you're overqualified for the position. I said, well, I'm kind of underemployed at the moment. So, I'd still totally do something that I'm maybe, overqualified for. He said, nope, I won't hire you. I'm sorry. Good luck. And finally, then the position as the manager and director of the department opened up not long after. And
even better.
I was hired. Exactly.
Even
so
better.
I kind of got my, at the time, what I thought was my dream job. And I was there for 12 years.
Sometimes things come around and we think like, oh my gosh, this is my foot in, this is it. And then we get shut down. It's like, oh man, but only to find something bigger and better, around the corner. And so what was your undergrad degree in?
In exercise and sports science.
And then your graduate?
In kinesiology and applied physiology.
And that makes you now a data scientist?
I have now recently become a data scientist in that with our sports and the evolution of the technologies that are available, we have lots of streams of data coming at us, and we need to make sense of it. So I understand from the physiological perspective, and having worked in a lab and in the science aspect of sport and sports science, taking the data and applying that and looking for ways of making it useful. Basically, data as I view it is just all the numbers coming at me, and you could give me all the best, sources of data coming at me, but if I can't make sense of it, it's actually kind of meaningless. So it has to be transformed. So a lot of it is about taking those data streams coming in and having it transformed into information. Data doesn't inform until it's transformed. That transformation then whether that's a graph, whether that's, some other user interface to be able to understand all of that data coming in. That's information. Then we sometimes have to translate that into feedback. So as a coach, I can get all this data in. I can then transform it through different programs, have information, which is still maybe a little bit difficult. I have to translate it into a usable bit of information for an athlete to pass on for feedback so that then they can translate and change their behavior to be better.
And each athlete is different. You can't just group them all into one pot and say, here, everybody's going to practice at, zone 2 heart rate. Like everybody is different. Watts, power, perceived effort, all of that.
Correct.
So how many athletes do you have right now?
Right now
roughly?
I've got about 22 athletes that I coach.
Okay, so that's quite a lot of data to
Absolutely, yeah. Especially when we talk about multi-sport, when we're getting it from multiple sources. Cyclists, comparatively a little easier, but then I'm an oddball in that I work with cyclists that do cyclocross, that do track cycling, that do road cycling, that are even within road cycling focused on sprinting, time trialing, GC riders, kind of a mix in that. And so there's different data points that are more and less important depending on which sport.
And so are you having these athletes, are they mostly here in Boulder or are they all over the place?
Majority more in Boulder, though I do have some, remote clients,
and
people that are around the world and just have to get that information and feedback back and forth to them.
Yeah, so they'll find a place local to them and then they'll get the data to you.
Yep.
And you're testing them all regularly, correct?
Yeah, and in some cases now we're even moving to the point with the kind of wearable type technology and information that we're gathering on every training session, and actually more important as we move forward, what's happening in between training sessions. Objective measurements of quality of sleep, quantity and quality of sleep, and some non-invasive ways of looking at something like hemoglobin concentration with the CircuitCore Ember device. There are some new pieces of information that are coming into us that can help understand training and stress response of that one individual. And that's the thing. There's some blanket things, and we can get, bell-shaped curve, hit lots of people pretty close with certain recommendations. But at the end of the day, a lot of the athletes I'm working with, it's only, I need to figure out that last 0.5% for them.
Because we're talking. Everybody can train,
Tour
they can
de France,
sleep, they can eat. Yeah, this is the top
hour
level.
Record.
You need to get to that.
Multiple Olympians in addition to the teams I had, and so the demand for excellence is high, and so I have to figure out what each person needs individually by pulling in all these different bits of information.
So there is Apex Coaching.
That is, yep.
And so do you have help?
I do have several other coaches, and that's been a nice addition over the past couple years. So I actually formed Apex Coaching in December of '99 when I graduated from my master's program at CU Boulder. I was making hundreds of dollars doing coaching, not nearly enough to live on. It was something that I enjoyed doing, and it was still a process. And when I started at Boulder Center for Sports Medicine, I started working with, again, a lot more people and a lot more information through the resources there, but I still kept coaching elite athletes with Apex Coaching, though all the amateur athletes like you guys coming into Boulder Center for Sports Medicine, I was then working with through there and actually coached some amateur, athletes through there. Honestly, in my career, I've coached way more amateur athletes than elite athletes, though, the elites and professionals are the ones that get the higher amount of, coverage and that sort of thing.
So it was, so back to Craig Howie, he was our connection. And and I remember when he was really pushing to be pro, he invited me in to come train with him one day a week, and it was with Oxygen. And we were on our trainers, and you put the Tour de France up there, and you're doing like, I want to say like threshold efforts. It was pretty intense, but with the Oxygen, it made it just a little bit easier.
Correct.
So working with age groupers like that, do you miss it much, or?
Definitely.
Okay.
In some cases, the rate of gains that we can see with an amateur, with an age group athlete in a period of time are greater than what we can get out of an elite athlete. With the elite athlete, we're already at that upper cusp where we have to do a lot of work to get a very little bit of improvement. A lot of times with an amateur or age grouper, there are some really big gains that can be made in short periods of time by, just being good with that training progression and balancing nutrition and balancing life. And that's, a thing that with a lot of the elites, there's a little less focus there because literally in many cases they live a lifestyle that removes those additional life stressors like work. They have less social commitments. They make less social commitments because of that smallest margin of difference in recovery impacts the performance, which that, 0.5% may make a difference between a podium position and being paid or getting a contract, those type of things. So it's different, but there's still a lot of ideas that overlap in both. It's just at what level of importance. So going into the micro level of some of the performance analysis with age groupers isn't always the most useful exercise. It's not practically going to change their performance as much as pulling back and looking at big picture, looking at sleep, looking at balancing life and life stresses. If somebody is stressed out because of what family commitments they have, what work commitments they have, and their training is excessive relative to those things and they're imbalanced, it could be a great amount of training and a great plan, but because it's taking away from those other, it's actually mounting a level of stress and distress where ultimately they're worse off than if they were doing much less training and had a better balance between work and family life. And so a lot of times that's, again, a difference that I'm not doing as much of that now. And I really enjoy that process because, as I mentioned, I got my pro card, I worked full time. And for a period of time, I was working on my PhD, I was working full time, I was racing, and then got engaged. And with a family, it was one of those things I had to give up my PhD work and just, I could only do family work and still and coaching. I had then retired from racing. So those were the things that I could do, and I put at that priority level.
I think people underestimate the effect of stress, like when we're talking about age groupers, because we are balancing a lot of different things. And I love what you said, and I want to repeat it, is that some people, when their life is stressful, work or the commute or finding time for family, all of that starts to add up. And I would say that it impacts recovery the most, which is then going to impact the next workout. And so people like that maybe should look at how many hours, and maybe that is where the place that something needs to give.
Exactly.
And would you say then would go for more just quality within that time frame?
So think of the training that we're doing. If you have a set number of hours per week, what are you trying to accomplish there?
Right.
What's your real goal? Are you trying to create change rather than accumulate a certain amount of work done? Is it specific work that you need to do to be better, to change your current capacity? That's where often we get kind of stuck in, well, I need to do it just because I have this many hours and I'm supposed to do that.
Or I got to log the miles. And I think so much gets lost in that mindset of, especially when we're talking about Ironman, which is most of the people that we work with, is, it gets lost in there because there's this outside, they're watching everybody else.
Everyone else. They're watching the social media. They see this. It's posted on Strava. You're getting bombarded by, again, excess
noise,
data, maybe not information.
That could very well be adding to your stress.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely it is. I had athletes in Rio that literally took social media apps off their phone. No Twitter, no Facebook, no on their phone, so that they weren't getting that continuous barrage of boom, boom, boom. Whether even if it's positive, like good luck, good luck, good luck, just getting this overload of even a positive thing is an overload. So yes, the balance aspect, and again, the specific aspect of your training. What are you trying to accomplish in a given training session? Are you just trying to log the miles? Because that's not going to create change necessarily. It's are you working on technique there? And I often see, again, people that have gotten used to doing certain amount of training and just doing the same and not really thinking it through. Giving a talk here on Friday about cycling, fitness, and not just the fitness component in triathlon, but really the skills and technical and tactical abilities that can change your race, can change your whole actual relationship with cycling even, riding outside, riding with others safely and not being stressed out. We have some athletes that get to a big race, and there are a lot of athletes on course and they've not ridden around many other people and they are terrified, or they just don't have really good technical skills and they're at a race that requires those skills because it rained or it's windy or the road surfaces are not nearly as good as what they're used to, and all of a sudden it's a really bad situation for them because they haven't prepared properly for that. They don't have a better skill set outside of the physical or physiological development, that technical and tactical ability has gotten lost and or undeveloped or underdeveloped.
And all of those things are adding more stress.
And it's stressful. Yeah,
right.
The day before the race, you're thinking, oh my gosh, this hill, the climb, the turn, the whatever it is, the wind, the people, all of that is all of a sudden now clouding what should then be a time of, calm and, centering in on what you are going to do and what you're capable of. And all of a sudden you have all this external stress because your preparation didn't include pieces that would have just changed that for you, would have reduced anxiety.
And again, going back to this underestimation of the effect of stress, the stress hormone that everybody knows is cortisol, and cortisol is a part of the endocrine system, like the hormones. Yep. And when you and that system works on balance.
Yep.
So if one hormone is out of balance, guess what? Everything
redundant
else,
systems to back up and then take over, and everything starts to get
everything's out of balance. And this is how, would you say the majority of people are showing up to races in some capacity that they're training and living and racing in a state of imbalance? I know just from statistics about our society in general.
Yes.
Most of the people cruising down Foothills Parkway right now going 70 miles an hour are driving in a state of imbalance.
Yeah, and that's probably affecting, safety on the roads that we have.
Yeah.
For sure. When I was at Boulder Center for Sports Medicine doing, the standard physiology testing with, predominantly amateurs, if I looked at that big picture percentages, close to half of the people were training consistently harder than their body was adapting to. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. It's not about the load of work you're doing. It's not the accumulated volume that wins you anything. It's whether your body is adapting and improving its capacities. So I come at it from a very different angle than a lot of coaches and a lot of folks, where I want to apply the minimum stress that will yield the maximum response. Not the maximum rate of gain of improvement in fitness, not the maximum of fatigue, not the maximum that they can tolerate without getting injured, because I know I'm already on the downslide. At that point, we are overdone when we're at the point where we're going to fall off a cliff. A lot of athletes, the razor's edge is the place to be. No, that's actually a really terrible place to be, because if you go over just a little, that can end your season. It could be a massive injury. It could be a full-blown overtraining syndrome. There's some things that being on that edge is actually really not a good place to be. So when we can get back to a point where we're looking at the best rate of improvement over time, now we're really doing things and we have a better balance. We can tolerate if we have a little increase in work stress and not be off the cliff of stress. Mm-hmm. We're not over the edge. We can then dial back a little bit, get things more balanced. If you're already running the edge and then something goes wrong, your nutrition is poor for a few days, sleep pattern gets disturbed, that can be, again, massively impacting. And the recovery from that is individual, but if it's been going on for weeks or months, it may take very well weeks and months to come back out of it.
And what you're talking about to me is it takes time. So when we were just talking about Flora Duffy, she didn't just come onto the scene. She's been working hard at this for a long time. She just didn't come in this year. And I've seen her do races where she's gone off on the bike and like really pushed it, and then she falters on the run. But she went out there and she was doing it. It was probably a prescribed workout.
And learning where that limit is.
Exactly.
Where's
and I think a lot of
limit?
athletes want to just, they want that quick fix. Like, if I go hard for like 5 weeks, really, really hard, this is going to pay off and I'm going to hit my pace.
Yep. In most cases, those super overloads are just, it's a new mental thing that maybe somebody does, accomplishes a goal, but the fatigue is so great that you have to recover and rest so much that it's actually not worthwhile.
Yeah,
You
it's
have to
counterproductive.
let go everything that you potentially gained because the fatigue was so great. That very much happens in training, especially like overload periods. I mean, Flora has a story. I met her in 2008 on the way to the 2008 Olympic Games with Taylor. We were on the same flight from London to Beijing. She was going there injured. She was in a bad place going into Beijing and actually got lapped out on the bike, didn't finish her first Olympics. And then in London, she was in school at CU. So she was balancing being a full-time student in her undergrad and still racing professionally. She had actually kind of given up triathlon right after.
Wow.
She came to school at CU in January of 2009, and I got a call. I said, "Hi, my name's Flora. I think I may have met you on a flight to Beijing. I'm not doing triathlon anymore. I just want to race bikes. Do you think you'd be interested in working with me?" I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." And so she was doing collegiate bike races that spring and having some good success. And she did, one Xterra race at the end of that summer and hated it. She was like, "I'm still done with triathlon." It wasn't until 2010 that, she was swimming a little bit. She was definitely swimming some more and got to a point where she could run healthy. And, decided that summer in 2010 to give it one more try just to see, there was the World Cup race in Des Moines. And she went out and had a top 20 finish, probably 19th or 20th. And she was like, that was kind of fun. I was like, all right, well, we'll be smart about it. And she had a really nice progression into London. And unfortunately, first lap of the bike, she went down. She crashed in a corner. It was really oily. I don't know if you remember seeing.
That.
You can watch the video. Her wheels are continuing to rotate as she goes down. There were two or three in front of her who went down. And, she's a great cyclist. There's nothing you can do. You could put anyone, I don't care who it is, best cyclist in the world in those same conditions, you're going to go down. And she finished London, but a very big disappointment. She had finished 7th at the WTS race in San Diego just, in May that year, had won a World Cup just the week before that in Watalco, and had another disappointment in London then. And so she finished up school then, in 2013. And so 2014 was the first year that she was really kind of all in without having the extra stress of school. And that's where, she focused on Xterra and had that kind of rise and that mastery level of execution in the race, and was able to learn how to manage her effort in a technical bike and a little longer race than the Olympic format. And she was still doing ITU racing. And then 2015, she had, again, some continued success. The Abu Dhabi WTS podium was a massive, oh my gosh. And I was actually fortunately able to be at that race.
That sounds like a cool place.
It's like, Flora, that's the level. That's what you can do, And, it's continued to progress. And this year, again, overnight success that's taken her many years to get there. We worked together for a number of years.
And what was that like seeing her become the ITU world champion? Because I know we were jumping out of our seats.
Yeah,
we were
absolutely.
just cheering. And I think I even was crying. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine from your seat. What was that like?
It was absolutely one of those best moments. There's going into that, was there an opportunity? Yes. Was there a chance? Yes. Was it going to be easy in any way, shape, or form? Absolutely no. I mean, Gwen's only been beaten, twice in the past 2 years. So it was going to require, if not beating her, finishing no more than one place behind her. And that was tough. I mean, Gwen clearly won the Olympic Games. She was on phenomenal form. Flora had a good Olympics in 8th. In some ways, she was a little more disappointed than in big picture what it was. If you look at Olympic progression, DNF, 43rd, 8th, that's a nice progression over the past 3 Olympics, but it still wasn't, not in the medal, level, which again, in a lot of cases, people look at Olympics, it's either a medal or no medal, which to me is pretty overblown. It's a pretty incredibly difficult thing to achieve, win an Olympic medal. And there are a lot of phenomenal athletes who never have and never will, and a lot of phenomenal ones then who have. But that performance in Cozumel, the way it was with such a small gap out of the swim, and then that bike, just the pieces fell into place. It was situational. It was like, if this happens, that might happen. Like everything was like right on this tenuous, maybe yes, maybe next, yes, maybe yes. And I mean, I'm just writing down the splits as I'm looking at the time gaps and, oh my gosh, this is possible. And then on the run, I'm looking, oh my gosh, she may have taken it out too fast. She actually put time into Gwen. Like this is now, we're in uncharted territory, but she doesn't look bad. She looked very good second lap.
And it was hot.
Yes, and a little more, and then came back a couple seconds. But the way she was running, it was like, it's happened. At that point, it is happening. This is not going to be stopped. I saw that with that one lap to go, unless something just crazy, which, again, Johnny Brownlee, the next, you see what could happen. I think I saw a tweet from Barry Siff before the race was over. You better be celebrating. I was like, there are no chickens yet. That's just an egg out there on course. I am now not counting anything.
Especially with Gwen behind you.
It's done.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah. Anyone. Always respect the competition. I ask that of my athletes. I, as a coach, will always respect. You never know what can happen. So not till it's all done. And when it was done, man, just that incredible emotional, just a high, and that was a great day. Just the execution. I think my last text to Flora before that was, just have fun pushing your limits. Day before, that was the final advice. Pushing the limits, and she did.
Oh, she definitely did. The execution was so impressive, and it was such a joy to watch.
Yep. And many, many years and hard days in the making to get
there.
Years,
exactly.
Hard years even.
Yeah, it's patience. And if you don't love it, if it's not filling you up, she took a break from it, and that break was exactly what she needed, Yeah,
recenter and find what she wanted and rediscover that passion for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is big.
So what's the biggest thing you see with amateurs and trying to take them back from going too hard all the time and maybe sprinkle in that easy stuff? What do you believe in? What's your philosophy?
Yeah, again, one of the other, I'd say, mistakes that commonly are made by a lot of amateur and age group athletes is this pushing consistently hard, training fairly hard. If we think of like Ironman race pace, doing a lot of work at Ironman race pace, work hardening. I'm just going to go there. I'm going to hold that speed. I'm going to hold that power. I'm going to hold this pace. I'm going to do everything there. But in fact, there's not a lot of physiological adaptations that occur at that level. Changing your performance occurs typically from pushing well above that, and in some cases even well below that. It is in getting to both ends of the spectrum of truly hard and truly easy that we can change our performance more so than sitting in that middle hard zone. It's very difficult to break that habit, and you have to be disciplined. Some of it, when I ask athletes to sometimes change and start doing this, if they're not doing the easy enough, the hard can never be hard enough. And so it takes first that half step back to dial down, to dial it back, to go truly slower, to go truly easier, so that when you go for your more intense sessions, then you have enough recovery from the prior sessions that you can actually push harder and elicit a change. So if you don't go easy enough, you can't go hard enough. And if you don't hit those ends of the spectrum, the middle level won't change very much.
I love that. That is said so well. I think a lot of people come across the concept they can't wrap their brain around. All right, I need to do a 5-hour bike at 21 miles an hour, but you've never had me ride 21 hours an hour for 5 hours. And they can't grasp that, but you need to believe and have faith in that process.
Race day equipment, proper taper. If you have a proper taper from a proper training build, you should be gaining at least 2 or 3% in performance anyhow. If not, 4, 5, or 6 if you really nail a good taper. And again, if you add equipment changes in that is huge. And that's where the trust and faith in what you've done it comes in handy. And you have to develop that. There's mental training. That's the other big thing that people don't do true mental training. You have to set aside time to go through visualization, to plan out your self-talk, to have a routine for relaxation, to put you in the right place. That requires training, just like improving a transition time requires a technical training. You're not forcing a physiological stress there. You are doing something that, though, will have massive impact on race day. And so, again, don't forget those little things. They become the big things. Your head, at the end of the day on race day, will predict your success or failure more than anything else.
You are speaking our language with the mental training. So I know we got to run here, but thank you so much, Neal. It has been awesome to sit across from you and reconnect after so many years. And you're doing amazing things. And it's only because of your dedication and your vision and your hard work, right? So everyone be patient, right? Like it
does take time.
It takes time.
Yep.
And it's not like you're not working hard now. You're traveling. I'm looking at your calendar, which you're saying all the red marks are travel. And you're doing a lot of travel. You've got a family. You've got these amazing athletes. And you are somehow finding balance in there. Yeah?
Yep. Still finding some balance. I'm actually training. I'm going to be going down to the Miami Man race to try to qualify for Aquabike Worlds next year in Penticton and see if I can have a good one next August. So
sweet. Well, we'll be checking out those results and we'll be with you on race day.
All right. Great.
Thank you, Neal, very much.
Thank you, guys.
All right, that's it. Episode 45 with Neal Henderson. There's so much there. It reminds me a bit of our chat with Shane Eversfield from episode 20. If you haven't listened to that episode, you have to go back and listen to it. And if you did listen to it, go back and listen again. I think I'm going to do that. There's so many similarities there. But it's this concept that, like, everything counts, right? Like every pedal stroke, every night of sleep, and every off-balance experience. And this constant reevaluation of our goals to make sure that our actions are aligned with where we want to go. It's so important to choose every action, every word, every mindset, right? All of these things ensure that there is constant alignment with our vision, and then being open to see when we are misaligned. Course correction only takes an instant, and sometimes that means bagging a workout for rest or pushing past your normal pace to truly go hard within a hard workout. Neal's words are gold for any athlete. So because this is a quick podcast, it's certainly one to keep in your queue and revisit. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. We will catch up with you next week. And again, if you're racing Oceanside or you know someone that is, please join me the next morning for some delicious restorative yoga to get your body and mind back on track. And if you're there, if you come to this class, please come and introduce yourself so that we can ride the high vibe together in person. All right, take care, you guys. Check your alignment constantly to make sure that your actions, thoughts, and words keep you en route to living your greatest vision in this life.